I hope you're all doing well today as we continue our listening to reading. This is part of our daily five that we do. We're going to continue on in our book, The Boxcar Children Surprise Island by Gertrude Chandler Warner. This is book number 2 in her series. Now, last chapter, chapter 6, which was called, it was called The Museum. It ended with a foreshadow. A foreshadow is kind of a literary term that tells us that something is going to happen because Benny thought that the coolest thing in the museum was going to be the birds, but Benny did not know what was going to happen next. It was kind of a prediction. And so that foreshadowing kind of tells us, something cool is going to happen. And I bet we're going to find what that is today. This is chapter number 7, Exploring. So obviously they're going to be doing what? Exploring the island. Yeah, we've got some Native American stuff there, don't we? See that? Ooh, some more foreshadowing. All right. Page 76, if you're following along in the book. The next morning, the rain had stopped and it was a beautiful day. First, the 4 children went swimming. Then after breakfast, they started out with a big kettle to explore again. Let's go down to the very end of the island today, said Henry. I'll make a picture of the island as we go along, said Violet, taking the blue book. They walked along slowly until they could see the very end of the island. Look! Oh, look! Cried Jessie. What a big pile of shells! It's, it's rather, it's taller than Benny, cried Henry, as he and the others ran to the shell pile. But they're all broke, said Benny, picking up some of the shells. Broken, Benny. Well, they're broken then. All broken clamshells. No pretty ones for our museum. Yes, but look. They were all clamshells, just as if someone had sat here for years and years getting out clams. Maybe they did, said Violet. Who did? I don't know, Benny, replied Henry. I know I never saw anything like it before, not even in a picture. He took a stick and dug in the pile. Violet made a little picture in her book of the shell pile. Then the children started to explore the other side of the island. They found that this side of the island was very rocky. Jessie, Henry, Violet, and Violet were looking up in the high rocks when Benny said suddenly, Look, a little cave. Let's go in. He's right, said Henry, looking in. Come on like this, said Benny, going in on his hands and knees. The other children went after Benny, laughing. Oh, it's just like a little room, and I can see another one. Here's a picture, or an illustration, if we more correct literary term, of the children going into the cave. It's nice in here, said Henry. Let's go on. They all crawled after Henry and came to another little room. They could still see the ocean as they looked back. The children sat down and Henry began to dig with a stick, just for fun. Suddenly, he dug out a small stone. Oops! What is this? He picked up the stone and he rubbed off the wet sand. Then he jumped up. It's a Native American arrowhead, he cried. What do you know? Let me see it, said Jessie. It certainly is an arrowhead. See the little place at the end where they tied it to a stick? They put feathers on the other end, said Henry. It's for our museum, cried Benny. So it is, cried Henry. You think of everything, Benny. Let's dig and see if we can find another one. If Native Americans lived here, then they had more than one arrow. The children began to dig, and when Watch saw what they were doing, of course, he began to dig as well. If we find a lot of Native American things, cried Henry, maybe some real museum will want them. They might even want to buy them. That's a good idea. Let's come here early some morning and dig, said Jessie. Besides, it's a lot of fun. Suddenly, Watch stopped digging. It began to bark. What's the matter, old boy? What are you trying to tell us? He went over and put his hand in the hole Watch had dug and took out a big, smooth stone. Wow, I think it's an old axe head, he cried, turning it over and over in his hand. The other children came to look, and Benny took it in his hand. Watch barked again sharply. Then he threw back his head and gave out one long howl. Ooh! Something's wrong, cried Henry. Watch never howls. Oh, look, Henry, cried Jessie in a frightened voice. They all looked at the door, and water was coming in almost at their feet. Let's get out of here, shouted Henry, starting for the door. Come just as fast as you can. They crawled as fast as they could, but the water was quite deep. Watch began to swim. Joe doesn't know where we are, cried Benny, or he would save us. I'm scared. Don't talk, Benny. Keep going. Soon they were in the first room. A wave is coming, Henry shouted. When it comes, get out fast. The wave came up and broke over them, and Jessie caught Benny's arm and pulled him out, and the four frightened children crawled through the water and scrambled along the rocky edge before another wave came in. They rested there a short time, and they crawled to the shell pile. Be careful, said Henry. Don't fall. Oh, thank goodness, cried Jessie as they came to the dry sand. I'm all tired, said Benny crossly. Crossly is a word for kind of sharp, not very kind, almost mean. I'm scared of that old cave. Well, said Henry, I'm the one who ought to have watched the tide. The cave is perfectly safe when the tide is out. Just think how lucky we are to be out. We did get out, said Violet. Thanks to good old Watch for that. She was still so frightened that she shook all over. Right, said Henry. Let's rest a little while, then we'll go back the way we came. When the family came home, slowly walking back to the barn, Joe saw immediately that something was wrong. He waved to them from the hut. All right? All right? He called. No, we're scared. We almost died. The water came in the cave almost all over us. What do you mean? Said Joe, very excited. We crawled into a cave, and the tide came up and almost caught us, Joe. I should have looked for the tide. If Watch hadn't barked, we wouldn't have seen the waves coming in. I can see that you're all worn out, said Joe. You are too tired to get dinner. Captain Daniel has made a big kettle of stew. Why don't you each bring a bowl down here and eat with us? Jessie looked at Joe and smiled. We will. We will get a bowl and a spoon, and we'll be right back. When the children sat down on the sand by the little hut, they began to feel better. The hot stew was delicious. Benny looked sleepy. Where was this cave? Asked Joe. On the very end of the island, said Jessie. We found some Native American things in it. What did you find? Said Joe quickly. Henry took the arrowhead out of his pocket and gave it to him. We found something else too, but we forgot to bring it. No, I brought it, said Benny, almost asleep. It's in my pocket and I can't get it out. Joe put his hand in Benny's pocket and pulled out the stone. A Native American axe head, Joe said at once. I thought it was, said Henry, but you seem to be sure. Well, I guess I'm sure, said Joe, turning it over. Maybe there's some other things in that cave. I'm scared to go in that old cave again, said Benny crossly. Oh, don't say that. Just watch the tide. There must be some good Native American digging in there. If you ever want some company, I could go with you. Oh, would you? Said Henry. Then we certainly would be all right. There's a big pile of shells near the cave, too. What? A shell pile? Shouted Joe. Then I shall certainly go with you. I must. Why? Why must you? But it was the last word he spoke, for soon he was sound asleep. Joe was saved from answering Benny. He just smiled and said, I'll carry him home for you. It would be the best thing for all of you to get some sleep. Joe picked Benny up and took him to his own bed, and Jessie, Violet, and Henry followed them to the barn. In a few minutes, the other three children fell asleep right in the middle of the day. Now that's the end of this chapter. The next chapter will be it's called Indian Point. We now use the term Native American, but when Gertrude Chandler Warner wrote the books, they would use the term Indian. Let's talk just a little bit about what happened to the children that day. They obviously were worn out, even though it was the middle of the day. Why do you think that they're so tired? Why? Most likely because the fright, the scare, everything drained their energy and made them feel like that they had worked and worked and worked. Have you ever worked and worked and worked and worked and you were so tired, when your head hit the pillow, you're like, asleep you were. That's kind of like what happened to Benny, didn't it? Well, the same thing happened with those children because they had had quite a fright, and it took a lot of energy, and certainly they were scared for their own lives. But fortunately, because of Watch and his barking, they made it out alive. And we shall continue on in the book. On Tuesday, we'll read Indian Point. All right. Thanks. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you guys soon.